Now, let me teach you when to disagree with the experts, because of course we all do it. But there's a good way to do it and a bad way to do it. And this will be your important lesson of the day. You ready? Okay. Here's what you should not do. Do not disagree with experts and then cite as your reason for disagreeing with the experts a fact which all the experts know. Okay, I just gave you an example that all the experts in statistics know about the Bible code. The Bible code is a debunked, an idea that if you looked in the Bible and you did various schemes to find secret messages, you would find all these messages, such as, I'll just pick one, this is random, not a real one. If you took the second letter of the first sentence, but you took the third letter of the next sentence, and then the fourth letter of the next sentence. So there's all these little algorithms that would run against the Bible, and it would spit out things that you didn't think could possibly be, natural. So it'd be like little predictions, and you'd say, yes, look, it's like a full sentence prediction, and it actually happened. So there was a time when people thought the Bible had these secret codes. That was debunked by some scientists who took their same algorithms and ran it against any big book, like War and Peace. Turns out War and Peace is full of secret messages and predictions that actually came true. Because it turns out that if you've got something as complicated as a big book filled with letters, you can find some algorithm that will produce full sentences just by trial and error, and they will look like predictions that happened. So stating that as the reason for your argument doesn't make any sense, because the expert knows that. Right? Here's some more examples of that. I've heard the argument that CO2 can't be causing a climate crisis because CO2 used to be much higher in the past. You've heard this argument, right? People say climate change isn't real because CO2 used to be way, way higher in the past, and there was no civilization back then. If there were no humans, and CO2 was way higher in the past, and things seemed to be fine, so it's all a hoax, right? Here's the problem with that. Every climate scientist knows CO2 was higher in the past. Do you see where I'm going? All the experts who say climate change is a problem, they know what you know, that CO2 was much higher in the past. That's not a reason to argue against them. What that proves is that you don't know why you don't understand their argument, basically. Now, I believe that I read once that CO2 was higher in sort of the distant history of the Earth, but it was the same time that I believe the sun was less strong, so there was some countering force that is easy to demonstrate and well known. So, in general, if you're disagreeing with experts, but you're using as your basis for disagreement a fact that every one of those experts knows, you're almost certainly not making a good argument. You could be right, because experts sometimes are wrong and you don't know why. So you could be right by accident. But you should check yourself and say, wait a minute, my argument is based on one fact that the other people already know. There's got to be some other argument, or that's nothing. All right? Here's another example. When I predicted that Trump would win in 2016, I was going against all the experts and all the pollsters. Was that smart? Was it smart for me to disagree with the experts when I was using their same data? Because they knew what the polls were. We're all looking at the same data, right? So I should not have disagreed with the experts, wouldn't you say, if all I were using was the same data they were using? Because they would know more than I do, plus they know the same data I know. Except, here's what's different. I was not using their same data. I was using my expertise, which is different from theirs. My expertise was persuasion. And as a trained persuader, and other trained persuaders saw it at the same time I did, they said, whoa, 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 this isn't like the past. We've never had this skill set running for president. And you guys don't see it coming but I'm kind of an expert in this persuasion stuff, and I do see it coming just like a train. Like I can see it coming, right? So if you disagree with the experts because you're bringing knowledge that they don't have or expertise that they don't have, that might be a reasonable disagreement. Again, doesn't mean you're right and they're wrong. Could go either way. But at least you're being reasonable. That would be a reasonable way to disagree with an expert because you're bringing something new that they don't have. But if you're only bringing the stuff they already know, I think I'd lean toward the experts, not you, in that case. I had one other expertise in the case of calling Trump's 2016 victory, which is that I know a lot about my white males. As a white male of a certain age, I kind of have a little more insight into white males of a certain age. And I know what they're willing to say out loud in public, and I know what they privately think. And it's a little bit different. So I'm not sure that all the experts had maybe the same, experience with this group of people who ended up being influential in the final outcome. So whenever you think you have some extra insight or expertise or data, then maybe disagreeing with an expert makes some sense. Here's another one. I've disagreed with climate change experts about their projections of how bad things will be in 50 to 80 years. Does that make sense? I'm not a climate change expert, right? So if I'm disagreeing with the experts, aren't I being irrational? Because there's no fact that I know about climate change, and this is true. There's no fact I know about climate change that they don't know. So they know all the facts that I have, plus lots more. Would it be reasonable for me to disagree with them when they know everything I know, plus the scientific method has backed them up, they say, plus the majority of experts are on the same side, plus they know way more than I do? Is that reasonable for me to disagree in that case? Well, if that's all the variables that were involved, the answer is no. If there were no other variables, it wouldn't really be reasonable for me to disagree. I don't have anything to add to it. But when you're predicting what's going to happen financially, you're now in my ballpark. Because I worked as a person who made financial predictions for big corporations, did it for years, and I have expertise in it. So when I'm criticizing climate change, the part I don't criticize is the science part. The science part is that if you add CO2 to the atmosphere, no matter how it gets there, human or other, no matter how it gets there, all things being equal, would that warm up the earth? Probably. I'm not disagreeing with experts because I don't have any extra data. What extra data do I have? What extra science do I have? None. So when they make a claim that CO2 should warm the atmosphere, all things being equal, I say, I don't have anything to add to that. I'm not going to doubt it, and I'm not going to confirm it. I'm just going to say, well, you're experts, I don't know. But when you get to the second part, which is they make a financial, not a scientific, but a financial estimate of what it's going to do to the world economy, you're in my expertise. So if I criticize you from my expertise and you're a scientist, you should listen to me. Literally. If a scientist tells you to believe a financial estimate or a financial prediction, and a financial expert who makes these predictions or has for a living says no, who are you going to believe? The person who knows the most about financial predictions or a scientist? Because scientists are not financial predictors. So when I disagree with climate change, I'm not disagreeing with scientists on science. I'm disagreeing with scientists on my expertise, not theirs, my expertise. I have another expertise too, which is, again, persuasion. And so I have a theory of why maybe scientists could be, fooled or biased or subject to confirmation bias, at least on the financial part, financial predictions. And it is, everything that you already know, which is that there's a group think and there would be a penalty for going against the grain. So if you're going to disagree with the experts, at least have a theory of why they're wrong. So sometimes I have a theory that there are just too many penalties for them to say, going against the grain, so it's cognitive dissonance or confirmation bias, or that I have extra facts or extra information. All right, here's another example of the same thing. I see this argument all the time about wearing masks, and it goes like this. This was tweeted at me today. The problem with this, it was tweeted at me today that we know masks can't work because the tiny holes in the mask are way bigger than the even tinier virus. Now, most of you have probably made this argument, right? How many of you have made this argument? Scott. The scientists have looked. They've seen that the masks have these big holes on them when you go microscopic. And the hole is this big. The virus is the size of a pea. Let's say relatively speaking, the virus is the size of a pea. The holes, the tiny holes in the mask, would be the size of, let's say, a basketball hoop. How does a basketball hoop stop something that's the size of a pea? Right? Have you made that argument yourself? Raise your hand if you've ever made that argument. If you did, you would know you're disagreeing with the majority of experts who say that masks work. Now, here's my test. Do you think that the experts who say masks don't work, who say that masks do work, do you think they're unaware of your pea going through a basketball hoop brilliant analogy? Because if they're aware of that fact, then you're adding nothing to it. It's a fact they know. It's a fact you know, that the size of the holes in the masks are so big and the virus itself is smaller. Do you think they don't know that, the experts? I'm pretty sure all of the experts know that. But they know everything you know, which is, let's say, that fact, and more. All right? So they know everything you know. They know that big hole and little virus exists. But the other thing they know is that it's been tested in a variety of real world situations. And in the real world, the evidence is very strong that masks work. So they're aware that when you test it in a laboratory, you can come up with a very good reason why maybe it wouldn't. But it might have to do with the water droplets being bigger than the virus itself, so maybe they don't get through the basketball hoop. Could be that it changes the direction or the viral load. We don't know why. But the point is, if the experts know everything you know about the size of that virus, there's something you don't know. And that's what you should take away from it. You shouldn't take away from it that the experts are lying if they know more than you do. Now, how often have I disagreed with the experts? And let me see if I'm consistent with my own rules of knowing when to agree or disagree with experts. When the question came up of closing travel from China, the virology experts said in the very early days, no, you don't need to do that. And I disagreed with vehement cursing public statements that we should close the travel from China immediately. Now, who was right? Well, I was right. I think history shows that I was right, that we should have closed China travel as early as I said, which was well before Trump did it, which is, I think it was a week later. But was I, so even though I was right, let's examine if I was right for the right reason. Okay? So what was it that I added to this, to the experts? If the experts say it's not a risk, why should I say it? What do I know that the experts don't know? And here's what I do know. Risk management. Are scientists experts in risk management? Because if you studied economics and if you have an MBA and a lot of experience in business, as I do, I would consider myself not like a world expert in risk management, but certainly it's my expertise. So understanding risk and making decisions in the context of risk management is what you learn when you get an MBA. It's what you learn in business. I'm good at it. So when I looked at this situation, I didn't say I'm smarter than epidemiologists. I said, I don't think they understand risk management because the risk is catastrophic. And here we are, right? We knew the risk was catastrophic. We knew that it would be expensive to close travel, but it would be better than catastrophic. So from a risk management perspective, it was kind of a no-brainer. That anybody who understood my expertise, risk management, would have found that an easy decision. And in fact, who was it who famously, followed on pretty quickly? It was Trump. Would you say that Trump is also an epidemiologist? No. Is he an expert on risk management? Yes. Yes, that's exactly what he is, in the same way that I am. If you're experienced with business, you are somebody who's been making risk management decisions for decades. Yeah, Trump is very, very experienced at risk management. So if you're disagreeing with the experts because you bring a different expertise, that can be valid. Doesn't mean you're right, but it could be a valid disagreement. When the experts were first saying that masks don't work, before they said they do, I called that a lie on day one. Now, did I call it a lie because of my expertise in virology and the physics of masks? No. I brought a different expertise to that. And that different expertise is that as the creator of Dilbert and somebody who's worked in business for a long time, I know how big organizations work. And I know that big organizations will routinely lie to manage behavior. And it occurred to me that since we were talking about a shortage of masks, at the same time the experts were saying, nah, you don't need a mask. But maybe the healthcare workers do need them. No, you don't need them. Save them for the healthcare workers. It won't make any difference. It seemed very likely to me that they were making the decision to manage the shortage, and it was not an actual scientific statement. So in this case, my expertise in bureaucracies and how they lie to manage resources, I applied to this situation, and with no understanding of epidemiology or the size of the physics of the masks, I correctly predicted that they were lying, and that was the truth. How about when I said early on in the pandemic, and I was saying that we should at least do a major test and really, really quickly on hydroxychloroquine, because if it worked as claimed, it would be huge. If it didn't work, well, it's not much risk. It's pretty low risk compared to the pandemic. Now, my current thinking is that hydroxychloroquine almost certainly, at this point, we could say wasn't the game changer. I don't know if it works a little, but it certainly isn't working so well that everybody's adopting it. We would know that by now, in my opinion. But was I right or wrong in saying we should go hard at hydroxychloroquine in the environment of not knowing whether it worked or not? I was 100% right, as was Trump. Not right that it works, but right that there's enough evidence it works that we should go hard at it and know for sure, because we tested it rigorously, that we should just go at it as hard as possible. And at least eliminate it as a possibility. At least eliminate it. So I think I was right on that as well.